So how do you say no to foods that are unhealthy? Right. That's the challenge. Once you can do that, weight loss becomes a lot easier. And so, what are some strategies that you can rely upon, predictably rely upon, that will allow you to consistently, relatively easily, and without using a lot of willpower, help you say no to unhealthy foods? Okay. So let's take a step back here before to articulate the problem. So a lot of times the reason we feel compelled to eat certain foods is we go into almost what's called a food trance. Okay. And so we stop thinking logically and we get very emotional and we start imagining in our mind how good that food's going to taste. And what we typically do to say no to that is we imagine how the food's going to taste and then we say, no, I can't have it. And what happens is that process creates deprivation. So the process you're using to say no right now is really a willpower based model where subconsciously you're imagining eating the food and generating desire for it. And then consciously you're trying to use your willpower and say no. And that's a very ineffective way to say no to foods, right? Because you're subconsciously generating all the desire for it. And then you're trying to rely on your willpower to stop yourself, right? And this is what it feels like. And this is why it doesn't work for very long. Okay. So what we want to do is use a completely different approach. And again, this is a subconsciously oriented approach that is going to really focus on reducing the desire. And so another way to put this is that, when they say that like an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. So instead of, assuming that we just need willpower and we're always going to feel a lot of cravings, we're going to go to the source of the cravings. We're going to recognize what we're doing subconsciously to generate the desire and the cravings in the first place. And we're going to stop it there because this takes a lot less energy than fighting against the cravings. Okay. So how do you do that? So there's a couple different ways, but I'm going to give you kind of the main core way. And I want to let you know, this isn't something that you may necessarily just hear and just be able to do instantly. This is something you want to work on. It's not much different than any other sort of skill you want to learn. You learn it here and then you practice it a little bit. And you keep tweaking it and better at it. But let me give you kind of the general strategy. So when you see a food that you're tempted by, okay. Now, again, I want to make this clear that I think the core of this right off the bat is that you want to understand that you're not starving. That's the first thing I want to make clear. I know a lot of times when people are trying to lose weight, they try and eat as little as possible and they're really hungry. And so right off the bat, we need to understand that we're at least satisfying a minimal level of hunger for ourselves. Okay. That being said, let's assume, all of a sudden we're faced with some food and we have a craving for it. And we see a cookie, we see the ice cream, we think of it and we want to go get it, however the process goes. And what we want to recognize is the way that we're thinking about that food in that moment is going to influence or what we're thinking about specifically. And so if we're thinking about that food and we're thinking about eating it, we're going to feel a lot of desire for it. Okay. And you say, well, Jim, of course I'm thinking about eating. It's a food. It's a food I enjoy eating. I get that. But what we want to do is first off, as soon as you start to feel that unhealthy craving, the first thing we want to do is affect our physiology. Relax, calm yourself down. Literally relax your shoulders, your chest, your stomach, your face, and let yourself take a deep breath. Okay. This is really important because when you do this, you shift yourself from the sympathetic nervous system, your fight, flight, or freeze response, to your parasympathetic nervous system. Okay. And why this is so important is it allows you to think more clearly. Understand when your sympathetic nervous system is activated, and it is activated when you start desiring a food, because what happens is you're thinking about eating that food and you're starting to get excited. And then you're trying to say, no, I'm not going to do it. And it creates this state of anxiety. And what happens is in that state, your sympathetic nervous system is activated and the blood goes from your brain out to your muscles and body. So we want to relax that, reverse it, relax the muscles and allow the blood to go back up to our brain. And now we want to take control of our thinking. And we want to think about the food and we can think about eating it. That's fine. But usually when you think about that tempting food, you're only thinking about eating it. If you think about it as a movie, you're thinking about the consumption. You're thinking about eating that food, putting it in your mouth, eating it, swallowing it, end a movie. Maybe you repeat that a couple of times. What I want you to do instead is I want you to relax. Imagine yourself eating the food, but then let that movie play out another 5 or 10 minutes after you're done eating. And now I want you to ask yourself, how am I going to feel mentally, emotionally, physically if I eat that food? Now, what this does is this allows our mind to shift from just the consumption of the food to now the consequence. And the beauty of this approach is that your mind knows that that consequence is real. See, the consequence you're trying to rely on is the long-term one of, well, I shouldn't eat this because I want to lose weight. But your brain just goes, nah, that weight loss isn't going to happen for a little while. So we'll just start tomorrow. Right. And so that's not going to work. So we need to bring a consequence that's very close. And this is the truth. You've got the truth on your side here. The truth is, if you eat those cookies, if you eat that ice cream, whatever it is, and you eat those things when you're trying to lose weight, there is absolutely a real consequence right on the other side of eating those foods. And it's one where you feel, oh, I'm never going to do this. And you start saying, oh, what's wrong with me? I did it again. God damn it. And then you start feeling depressed. And you feel frustrated and angry at yourself. And there's a lot of negative consequences that are instantly there. And then physically, you might feel really full. You might feel tired, stuffed, all the rest of it. So the real secret is to start to train yourself to not just think about the consumption of the food, but to go 5-10 minutes beyond the consumption to what the natural consequence is. And as you start training yourself with this is why I say this isn't just a one-time thing you do. Oh, it worked, it didn't work. This is something you start developing in yourself. And it works because even if it doesn't work at the first time, what happens is it primes your brain to become aware of what the consequences are after you finish eating it. Because there are a lot of consequences that you are not paying attention to. You are literally blind to them because you're not focusing on them. And as you start focusing on them time after time, you're going to start to notice there are heavy negative consequences to eating those foods, physical, mental, and emotional ones. And as you start to attune yourself to what those consequences are, when you ask that question the next time, now that awareness is going to be much greater. And it becomes much easier to say, I don't want that. You see what I mean? So it's not about cranking up desire and just expecting willpower to stop it. It's about seeing the full picture and reducing the desire because you're looking at it in a different way. So give this a shot now and work on it. Give yourself a couple days to do this. And if it doesn't work the first time, it's fine. Because like I said, you're tuning yourself up. Notice what the consequences are. And you develop this skill. But if you do this for a week, you will absolutely start to notice that it changes your ability to say no to unhealthy foods in a way that does not rely exclusively on willpower. And that means it's more long-term and sustainable.